It's Wembley. You know what that means. All In is in the books 2024. I had to steal that line from Excalibur because I appreciated him saying that at the beginning of the pay-per-view show. This is the Fight Game Media post-show coverage of All In 2024. I'm Kevin Ely with a good friend, Jeremy Finestone, from an undisclosed location.
Hello.
With a brand new mustache.
Hello. It was the G1 mustache, and then it just stayed.
That's great. That's great. You should keep it through the dome.
You know, it's going to stay until I just can't have it there anymore. And right now, it's holding tight. Like, I feel like it's Hangman, it's Page taking on a life of its own inside the world that it exists in. And, you know, from there, we just see what happens.
I think that's fitting because AEW is kind of in their mustache era right now. I think I counted 4 or 5 solid mustaches on the show. Tonight, 3 of them just in the tag team match.
I think Roddy really started
I think Roddy started it, and then Hangman legitimized it, and then Max Caster tried to ride the coattails of it. So
he tried to be the best mustache in the world, just like everything else.
The best mustache alive. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What a show. What a show did we have? We're bearing the lead here.
Let's kind of talk big picture. I've been a little persnickety in our fight game discussions going into the show, and mainly I've been persnickety about other people being persnickety. Mm-hmm. But we can go back and talk about that. But overall, coming out of the show, how satisfied were you with today's show?
I thought it was a very good show. I didn't think it was a great show, and I think that's a very clear distinction. It was a B+ with, I think, an excellent main event that buoyed the entire rest of the card. There were things to like in several of the matches. There were things that you can make an argument did disservices to each match in some of the matches. Mm-hmm. But as a whole, I cannot fault AEW for trying to take the biggest swings that they can on the biggest show that they have, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not going to at Wembley. Right. And they clearly have decided what their quote WrestleMania is. And it's All In, and they're going to try to do at least one stadium show a year. Wisely, I think, are not going for a third London show. Which is great for me because next year's stadium show is about 3.5 hours from my house, so I'll definitely be going.
I like that they flipped All In to a domestic show and then made Forbidden Door their London show, and then they can make the stadium show now domestic and then do the arena show.
Right. I like the idea of them keeping a big show in London. Mm-hmm. Because just showing up in London and combining it with a name brand versus just doing a show in London or a tour keeps it a big deal. So I like that swap. Forbidden Door makes sense, I think, to do that. But it also lowers not even lowers it makes the expectations more manageable for a Europe show, because now with Forbidden Door, there's not the expectation. They're in a no-win situation with All In at Wembley now, because they did 50,000 this year, which everyone was like, good. And unequivocally, that's a good thing for AEW to 50. That's amazing to have that big of a show at the level of business they're doing week to week. But it's diminishing returns. And I think if they had fallen below 50,000 next year, the narrative would have been they're slipping and slipping and slipping each year. So getting to reset that.
Or the scum.
Right. Right. But all in all, I mean, this felt like a big deal show. For me, it totally delivered. You know, I go by the old, I always forget the name of the director. I think it was Howard Hawks, who said like a great movie is 3 great scenes and no bad ones. And I think this one had the 3 great scenes, but it did have a couple of bad ones, but they were so not forgivable, but overlookable that I'm willing to give them a little grace.
Grace on
it. So Matt, so show of the year, I don't know if it's going to be in the show of the year conversation, but
How about you find me a promoter that loves a wrestler as much as Tony Khan loves Christian?
Oh my gosh, what's up with that? Like you go back to
the
like
only thing that I can think of is that this is leading into Copeland's return at some point.
Yeah, but oh gosh,
like this
does that mean?
You know what I mean? Like if you're using this to get to Copeland and Christian at the end of the year, and this is the pathway to do it, I can forgive it because you should start an angle like that at the biggest show of the year and pay it off. But if it's that, there are other people that could have used that clout.
Yes, and I'm fine with it being that as long as the world title doesn't. To me, Edge Christian in the world title scene is a step backwards.
It's a tag team,
big time.
They're your tag team. Like it's almost as if the entire tag team division has been stifled because the plan was to go with those two, and they're on a holding pattern until they get there. And I feel like those are all coalescing in some way. I could be wrong, but Tony's pretty transparent about the stars that he wants to prioritize and his big picture plans and who he earmarked for these big long-term kind of stuff. And Christian and Copeland is 100% in that category of, I have a big plan for you two.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know either. but it's so transparent, like you've seen this before.
Right.
Like things just stop in their tracks and you just get these angles and these like stories that are just, they're the paper mache inside the caster.
Yeah, and when I saw, I think it was on Collision, I guess so, because of the trios thing, almost all took place on Collision. Christian talk about how the trios titles is a step of him getting back to the world title, getting a world title shot. I thought, oh no, that's exactly where this is going, isn't it? I just didn't expect it to be that quick. And boy, we'll get to that one when we run down the show. Because the show was so earlier in the day, I had to choose between doing the pre-show and mowing the lawn, and I chose the lawn. So
good for you.
Yeah,
personal responsibility, accountability in our lives.
That was the one thing I had to do to make sure I could basically check out.
Did I tell you what you missed as a result of this trade-off of your ethics?
Yeah, I walked in during the when Saraya was entering.
Okay, so we had a lot going on before then.
Okay.
We started, I think we had 5 different match or segments in the 0 hour, which was 2 hours.
Yes, 0 hours.
0 hours. We had an 8-on-8 match, if you could believe it. It was Tommy Billington, Kip Sabian, Rocky Romero, Kyle Fletcher, Action Andretti, Leo Rush, and Dante and Darius Martin. And they defeated Jay Lethal, Satnam Singh, who apparently is back on the AEW wrestling roster, Anthony Ogogo, Aria Daivari, Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn, and then John Silver and Alex Reynolds. This was a party match with a giant winner's purse, is how it was billed. It was
a giant winner's purse.
Yes. Like, that was the whole deal, was that you had a giant winner's purse. I couldn't tell you what happened other than there was a face-off between Leo Rush and Satnam Singh, and Kip Sabian got a great reaction that was somewhat surprising to people outside of the UK, but inside of the UK, it was explained to us in the Discord that, no, in fact, this was entirely something that should be expected for Kip Sabian here. And it was fine. Dante Martin got the pin after a little bit of shine from Kyle Fletcher, and then we moved on to the next match, which ended up being Willow Nightingale and Tomohiro Ishii versus Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway. What did you think this match would be?
Based on their Collision squash match that they did, I actually expected a little bit of surprisingly effective tag team offense from Statlander and Stokely, like some elaborate crazy moves that basically depended on Statlander doing the work and Stokely actually like doing a holy crap, I didn't know he could do that move because he's actually trained.
Kevin,
and then well, was I really right? Wow.
Yeah. Basically what it was you had Statlander driving most of the offense and training Stoke on the double team moves here, there, and everywhere. You could have Statlander attack Ishii or Willow, and you could have Willow attack Stoke
Right.
or Statlander, but you could not have the men attack the women.
Right.
It was all the devices and all the things that you would see, but it did have a pretty amusing ending in which everyone got back in the ring. Willow pounced Stat right out of the ring, and then Ishii lariated the Spirit out of Stokely Hathaway and then got the pin. Everyone did exactly what they were supposed to do. Both teams were wearing matching gear. Everything was coordinated. It was perfectly fine. I await the opportunity for Willow and Statlander to get their time on the pay-per-view in 2 weeks at All Out.
And it's definitely happening at All Out, right? They've already announced
I would hope so. I mean,
but we haven't officially decided. They haven't officially announced that it's a CMLL title match, and they did not say what the stip would be. I presume that would come on.
Set.
I assume that's coming on Dynamite or something.
It should, I think.
It should.
They made a lot of newsworthy announcements towards the show, so there came a point where it's like, let's not announce more things that we need to do. Oh yeah, this did in fact happen. Stokely Hathaway gave Ishii a spine buster, jumped up, celebrated with Ishii to his back, and did the "oh no, he's not hurt," and then Ishii killed him. One of the many times that he killed him.
Okay, I may have to go back and watch this.
He did give Stokely a power bomb out of the corner after Stokely did the 10 punches, and I was just like, you better be getting your boots power bombed out of you. And that's exactly what happened. Stokely took punishment, man. Like, fair play to him. He knew his role in this match, and he took a beating.
Yeah.
All right. What
Fun.
else do we have?
I may actually go back and watch that because I love me some Stokely.
It was a fun 0 hour, if we're gonna be honest. Like, the time passed with all the newsworthy stuff like Forbidden Door and all that. Which is August 24th, 2025. And I'm very curious if the G1 finals play any part in that, because I'll be furious.
Yeah, because it's after the G1 instead of before this year, right?
I mean, the G1 ended on like the 18th of August this year, and this show's on the 24th of August next year.
Yeah.
So I could see that happening, but they can't really book New Japan talent until that G1 is over with these matches.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a complexity to that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But if the G1 is still in play, do you put the G1 finals there? And if you do...
oh, no.
Right?
Oh, no. No.
Right? Like, that's a mistake. But could you imagine trying to be sold into the idea that they're going to put the G1 finals on an AEW pay-per-view?
No. I can't imagine that. I cannot. I think all of Japan would
not want this to happen. I'm trying to speak of it now so that they realize it is a bad idea in a year in advance. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that would be ridiculous. I cannot imagine the Japanese fans tolerating taking the G1, the most Japanese aspect, like the most New Japan thing there is, and exporting it to another country, regardless of even making it a co-promotional show. Like, that just seems like a no-brainer bad idea.
They are taking the G1 Climax title shot that's guaranteed at Wrestle Kingdom, and they're doing it at King of Pro Wrestling this next year. Let me ask you this. Do you think that the G1 Climax title winner next year would challenge the IWGP title at Forbidden Door?
Now, that's a possibility. I could see that. I could see that before I would see actually moving the finals.
All right.
I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying that seems like a slightly less impossible.
That's a more workshoppable version, but I do think that you need to make sure that the New Japan Pro Wrestling audience gets their title shot viewership on a program that they don't have to pay any extra for, given that they've gone all that way, being loyal to their service. So those are the concerns I have about transporting those title matches elsewhere to AEW.
Do you see this being an indication that there will be more AEW talent in the G1? Like, set up some matches that way, like maybe a Claudio finally getting in, or Maybe having just maybe even like 2 or 3 versus like one. Like this year, obviously, it was like one person that AEW was not doing anything with, and clearly had a better role in the G1. But there's a lot of guys who like have always wanted to do it, and it could actually get them ready for a shot.
I think 2 is the right
I'm
number.
not saying have them win it or anything, but
no, I think 2 is the right number. You have to remember there was something like 26 people fighting for 20 spots this year, and it felt right. The amount of people that were in the G1, the amount of matches, and the caliber of talent. So if you are going to do it, what I would like is perhaps a play-in like they did for the New Japan side for a spot where there are 6 people like fighting for a spot, and maybe if it's next year, Takeshita and Mox get the buys in their brackets because they have been in a G1 before. And then somebody has to go through those guys to get into the G1 that year, and that happens on AEW television. And then that way you're like, okay,
you basically do an AEW play-in for the AEW slots.
Yes.
I like that actually.
And then you could do it that way. You could do 1 or you could do 2, but I think if you do 2, you almost devalue the whole concept, because it really should be like the 1 spot that 5 people are fighting for, rather than like the 2 spots that it gets muddied. You know what I mean?
And knowing Tony, they do some kind of like gauntlet ladder match for the G1 spot or something that just defiles the meaning of the term. Anyway, that's all a year away. So we got a lot to talk about with today's show.
How about we get back to the next match, which included for their former New Japan talent, Katsuyori Shibata. He teamed with Dustin Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, Ross, and Marshall Von Erich, and they beat Mike Bennett, Matt Taven, Brian Cage, Bishop Khan, and Toa Leona. The most noteworthy thing about this match is that Sammy Guevara and Brian Cage wore matching gear honoring Wolverine, but they were on opposing teams. And it was very obvious because the shades of yellow and blue were incredibly distinct for the palette that they were trying to set.
This is actually where I tuned in about halfway through this match, and I was really confused because I thought, oh, when did Guevara and Cage start teaming together? And it's funny because they even played it off at a spot where they finally squared off inside the ring together, and they pointed at each other's tights like the Spider-Man meme. And that was kind of entertaining, but still, like, quality control on the pre-show tights, not very strong.
This was
I have not watched any of the Dustin Assance or whatever is happening in ROH right now, where he's having the run of his life.
I caught it on Collision. Like I've been making a point to watch all the Collisions and Rampages lately going into this show, because I have been pretty critical of AEW. So if I'm watching and I'm critical and I've been mouthing off about it, I better make sure I know what I'm talking about. So
I have a thought on that coming up later.
I've been watching it, and Dustin Rhodes is fucking everywhere on Collision. Like when they were doing their Texas tour,
it's the Texas residency.
Sammy, like, you don't need to watch Ring of Honor to know that Dustin Rhodes is basically the most pushed guy in AEW right now, because they don't want him going to WWE.
Yeah, right. They're basically going to hand a whole promotion over to him to keep him from being in Cody Rhodes' corner. Yeah.
It's like, you know what? There are a lot of people that have said that, like, this guy's not worth the money or not. Like, the guy's delivering. He's great. Dustin Rhodes is great. Just.
Oh, he's great. He's a legend.
Point you decide that, like, it's okay if this guy's not here anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Your priorities here of, like, making sure you keep
the amount of effort they're putting into him to keep him there probably does not, like, you're basically preventing something that's going to be like a one-time, Dustin's in his corner in some match in Dubai or something, and that'll be it. Like, you
got
so it's
Cody
not like
and
he's gonna.
Like,
it's not like the Rhodes. Yeah, you're not getting like the Rhodes family and the Von Erichs against the Bloodline at War Games or anything. So, like, let's calm down. Although, hey, I love Dustin. If the new TV deal involves ROH permanently residing in Texas and he's, using it as to turn it into AEW's NXT, then I'm great. I'm good with that.
The next thing was Saraya coming out to the ring and making sure that everyone knew that Wembley was hers and this was her time and she was going to have her moment. And she's the best wrestler out of England, Kevin.
The best wrestler. But she pointed to a fan,
knew.
And then right before she pointed to someone in the stands and said, "Shut up, she's not here."
Yes. And then the music hit. Jamie Hayter's music came out, and in the brightest, most rainbow-colored getup that you could possibly see, you could not miss this woman. If she were 1,000 meters away, she stood out.
I thought she was tag teaming with Renee Paquette because Renee was wearing like this flowery dress as well, and I thought, man, those two match.
She was
also with the Becky Lynch hair.
Crazy, yes,
yeah,
the whole deal. He came out there, the crowd erupted. Credit to Ryan Fredericks, who pulled the Andrew Zarian on Tuesday and had a picture of Hayter doing her dance and said nothing more. Did not do anything other than put it out there. And I hope that he is taking his victory lap today because, that was a good poll, man. That was a good poll the last couple of days. That was one of a few.
A lot of people. I'm one of many people who was expecting Jamie back there. I was one of the people who thought that, and I still hold to this, may have been the original idea, that Jamie was going to be brought in as part of the Mercedes, that the arrival of Camille was setting up the Jamie return. And because it seemed pretty clearly set up to be 2-on-1, you have the giant monster in the champion's corner. How do you equalize it? Go back to my old buddy. And then the rumors, like you'd start to hear things like, yeah, that ain't happening. There's no way Jamie and Britt are working together. Cause coincidentally, someone has issues with Britt. So I thought this is a great way to bring it back. It was a good way to get Saraya on the show without taking up a full match. I don't know the story on if she is soon to be gone, if that was her swan song for AEW, but hey, she got her whole family a payday, I guess, or at least a moment. I didn't even know she had that much family. Are all those people wrestlers, or that's just like
she has a posse?
Yeah. I know her mom, her dad, her brother.
She has a boyfriend that is apparently incredibly unpopular that I have more or less said, oh, that's his name. Good to know. And I don't want to know anything else about this guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know.
What I understand, the more you know, the less you want to know.
Yeah. I found that's true with most of Saraya's personal life, but I don't mean that judging. She just seems to have some bad taste in guys time to time. Yeah, but God bless her. I'm glad that she got a spot in England, even if it wasn't probably the spot she hoped.
For all the effort that they put in on Rampage for the last 6 weeks, building up to this spot, they literally used so much time on Rampage for the build up to this Hayter thing. It led to something that was worth paying off. And while you never needed to watch Rampage once in order to get this, if you did, it made it feel like it was a little less missable, if that makes any sense. Like they laid groundwork there and made you feel like there was something there that if you followed the breadcrumbs, there were people on our Discord that saw it immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Venkin pointed out here, there was a point in time I too thought Jamie was just done. There was some chatter that she might have been done forever a while back. So really great to see her in really good shape. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with her right away. If they, yeah.
We have the main card.
Yeah, when the main card kind of started during the pre-show, they did all the entrances right away, which I thought was
a great idea.
Kind of a cool, ending the pre-show for all the people watching on YouTube who hadn't purchased it, actually getting to see the entrances and feel like you're going to miss something. I thought was an interesting choice, and plus it. Obviously, they needed the time because they seemed to have this thing booked for 4 hours, and they cut it off fast. But we'll get
there was one match that I felt like, wow, that was incredibly short. They got their shit in, but barely.
Right. Yeah, they're like, this is why you hear those stories of WWE cutting entire matches and such. So we had the Patriarchy, the Bang Bang Gang, House of Black, and the Packpool Combat Club. Pac and Claudio and Wheeler Yuta
Did you come
in
up
the
with
ladder
that?
match. Do what?
Did you come up with that?
No, I heard someone else say that. I think someone might have even said it on TV at one point.
That's
so I just
impressive.
stole it.
That's a good one. I couldn't. Yeah, all
It's
right.
it's a very WWE way to put it, but hey, I'm down with it as long
It's
as Mox is on
abbreviated.
vacation. One thing that was interesting is you get to see the entrances of two teams that depend on the arena going black during their entrance, and get to they have to like rethink how they do things. But let's see. I mean,
This
you know,
this was another party match. Like,
yeah,
were
it's
so many
basically
party matches to start out the show. Like,
right.
you had party matches for people coming into their seats during the show, and now that the seats have started and the show was on the air, they wanted people to pop over and over and over again.
The operative word of today's show is fan service.
Yes.
I think it was like this, and London fan service. Like they knew they were playing to the people in the stadium almost more than the people at home, because they knew that big pops would translate well. And this was just one of those ladder matches, just spot after spot after spot. One of the notable ones.
Key moment, Christian ran away right away.
Christian running away right away. Yep.
Removed himself from the majority of this match.
Yep. And Mother Wayne trying to climb the top ladder to retrieve one of her title belts. Just as a person, I appreciate it because there was a person in the stands who held up a sign right as she was climbing that just said, "Careful now." Which
there was Austin and Colton Gunn and Nick Wayne that decided that they were going to kill themselves over and over and over again throughout this entire match, because they were the young guys and everyone else had been through this kind of thing before. And my God, did they kill themselves over and over and over again.
Yep, they did. Nick Wayne knew his assignment for sure.
He very much, yes.
Claudio also came in a little fired up. I think he's just got his working boots on because he's been very busy these last few days. They brought his trophy over. He won the whatever the big match was at CMLL.
Medicated at this point.
Yeah, he's probably just like I hear he's a big coffee drinker, so he's probably hasn't slept in about 4 days. But he just seemed to be going at a higher, like he seemed to be moving with more energy than the typical first match on the pay-per-view energy. And there were some cool spots. One thing that was cool was a 310. It was they were doing the 310 to Yuma, and he turned it into the flying European uppercut in mid move, which was a really cool counter.
Let me ask you this: did this ladder match feel remarkably safer than ladder matches in recent past? The level of danger that I felt for this match, like it was never that much.
You know what it was that they were doing more table spots than ladder spots, is what I think. Because like in a WWE ladder match, you're seeing them more take big bumps onto ladders. And this match appeared to be a little more like a lot of tables set up, and then even though they were doing some like, they had that giant ladder that was even taller than the belts, and Juice had to like climb and
then like crotch himself onto the
crotch himself off a 15-foot ladder. But then even the final spot where Christian got pushed off, like wasn't a big move.
Shoulders. Yeah, it was a kick.
Yeah, he just sort of got pushed off, and I was like, was there something? I like counted. I was like, no, everything that's everything that's in place is already smashed.
Like,
yeah, so he just kind of fell. I do agree though. I think it was a little more safe than typical, which I'm fine with.
I do wonder if the presence of Christian and laying out this match, because it was a WrestleMania TLC match, where
absolutely.
He's been in a position where like you have to do these things to win over the crowd. He's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, I think so. Right? He's like, let me. Yeah.
They did not go to 11. You could say they went to 8 or a 9, and in some cases they went to 10, but it was a 10 in which they were not trying to break the top of the bowl.
Right. And also they're the first match on the show. They don't need to have the most memorable spot of the pay-per-view, or something like that. So the best thing they could do is keep it safe.
and there's enough people to go around where they could do a lot of different spots and not really overdo it with anybody. So yeah, it was fine. Clearly there's the fan service is an operative word. A fantasy camp is another operative word. So like for a lot of these guys, it's like I got to do the TLC match in a stadium with Christian. And also it was, let's give Pac his Wembley moment as a British wrestler. So that was clearly meant to, set him up. It was pretty obvious. It was probably originally going to be the Lucha Bros in that spot. But it was fine. There was a weird moment at the end.
Yeah, it'll have the appetizer for conflict before the big conflict next match.
Yeah. Where Pac wins, he and Claudio and Yuta celebrate on the ladder, and then the House of Black suddenly comes in. Yuta and Claudio clear the ring for them for some reason. And then they offer their handshake and raise the hand of Pac. Just Malachi and Brody.
Yes.
Which was an odd thing. And I remarked in the Discord that I was like, that felt like an unscripted, real moment. Because and mainly because I was like, there's no storyline reason to do that.
Right.
So I don't know.
If that's the case, I think that's bullshit. It's like not everything needs to have like people breaking character.
Right.
To, like,
it's the old NXT women's match trope.
It just like, Pac, you just got your moment. We don't need to put the boots on and stand up a little taller. They deliberately kept Claudio and Yuta away from Pac during the entire celebration. Pac won the belt, came down, was in between the ladder. Claudio and Yuta go up and grab the belt, so they're positioned away from each other the entire time. The rest of the match, they're never celebrating together, and they deliberately cut out before Pac can come and like walk with them. I'm very much hoping that we get like the odd couple like trios group where they're going to do really well with each other, but they do not get along. And it's learning to trust each other, but they don't end up like fighting in the end. Like they just end up being cool with each other.
Unless, this is where my thought was, when Mox finally returns from vacation, he'll be the only member of the Blackpool Combat Club without a belt.
Sure.
And he may not like that. And he may not like their new buddy.
Well, I mean, if Claudio and Pac can get along and those two being hated each other going back to Ring of Honor, they had multiple titles and there really was no reason for these guys to team up. Right.
Yeah.
So they need to delve into that. They need to make it feel like your time watching these programs in the past is paying off. If they just gloss over it and move on, I think that's a mistake. Like this is the case where you need to respect your past history of what you've done rather than looking past it and moving on to the next thing for brevity.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Next match. Okay.
Yeah.
This will be interesting to talk about. Mariah May beat Toni Storm for the women's title. There was a lot. This, to me, was one of the magnifying glasses of the show, matches of the show, where it was one of the ones I was most fascinated with to see how well it delivered, based on and it was one of the ones that in our ongoing Discord got scrutinized and discussed along with the main event as far as the build, the quote build. Do you want me to do my rant first, or do you want to?
I give you the floor because I actually think you have me mistaken or a little bit misunderstood about where I'm coming from on this.
Okay.
So I want you to have the floor and just say whatever it is that you need to say, and then I'm going to frame my stuff around that.
I think the people that I think we agree. I think we're probably not as far off as it might seem, or with even other people. The premise for going into this match, a lot of the discussion was, did the turn happen too soon, and did the program lose momentum going into this match that it should have either sustained or have been even stronger? Also, is the placement of this match, as far as like where it falls in the pecking order of this show, where it should be, and did they earn that spot? I would say, other than actual placement on the card, which I don't think you can really. I mean, they don't place them like next to match next. Obviously, like the second biggest match in the show is not the second to last match. So placement on the show, I don't put too much weight on. As far as the match delivering, and not just like in the quality of the ring, but in terms of, did the people buy into it? Did both people come out bigger than they were before, or were they both advanced in the way? And did it deliver on the story that they were promising? I would say it absolutely did, in my mind. Now, were there lulls along the way? Were there points where they kind of rinsed and repeated along the way because they didn't have a lot of new ideas? Could they have done it better? Sure. But in terms of like how good or bad the build was, I would say it was a solid B plus,
Mm-hmm.
and the match was an A. What say you?
What say I? We're not that far off at all.
Okay.
My main stance is that I felt that AEW did these two women a general disservice in how that they laid out what is arguably the longest running story that they've had, going back to potentially All Out or All In last year, when, Toni first started.
Yeah, if you go back to the beginning of the Timeless gimmick a year ago. Yeah.
Yes. So you have laid down this groundwork, and you have Mariah win the Owen Hart Women's Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Bryan Danielson won the Men's Women's Cup, and there was never any doubt in anyone's mind that that was prominent and worthy of a main event spot on the biggest show of the year. It was always built and capitalized on from the time that they really decided to pull the trigger on it after the Blood and Guts event with the Jeff Jarrett stuff. It became a primary driving factor of their TV on Dynamite, top of the hour segments, closing show segments, this and that. My main issue is that after Forbidden Door and Mariah won the title, they took the angle for granted, right? And it became the segment that was on at 6:20 p.m. on Dynamite. If it was even on Dynamite at all, it would end up being on Rampage or Collision, and it would be them jumping each other or a backstage segment. It was passing the time, and to me, I just think that if you had this title, which is arguably the top title for women in this show, and you say that placement doesn't matter in this one on this show, like it should have at least been on the second half of the card, like from match 6 through 12 or whatever.
I think you could have swapped it with the other women's match, and it would have been
I think
better.
it should have. Like, you are tacitly telling people that Mercedes and her title is more important than the AEW women's title that you have been building for the last 5 years by doing this. It was quietly shifted backwards. And they were trying to tell you when they negotiated with Mercedes Moné that there was always going to be two women's segments with prominence on these shows, the Mercedes segment and the AEW women's segment. And we all just kind of said, we know how this is going to turn out, and it is not until Mercedes has that AEW women's title that we're all going to be able to synchronize into like a tier system of who has what title and how the valuation system works. These women, Mariah and Toni, had a far superior match than Mercedes. I'm so sorry, Mercedes and Britt. All the major TV time, all the dedication was shifted to those two because they took for granted that this angle was set and that people knew what to expect coming into All Out at London between Mariah and Toni.
Mm-hmm.
My main thing is this could have been so much bigger. Like, there isn't a ceiling for women's wrestling. It's like, as long as we get them to this point, that's good enough. Like, we are talking about equality in men's and women's wrestling, but when push comes to shove, the valuation of the AEW women's title and the valuation of the AEW men's title is so clearly different And maybe that's right. Maybe it's not. But if we are going to feed into the process that is the reality, then it will become the reality, and we're not going to get the evolution that we're asking for. My main thing was that there was self-inflicted booking and planning on this entire thing that took something that was a slam dunk, and it was a slam dunk, but they pulled the reins back just to make sure that it didn't quite hit high enough or hard enough or whatever. And I just didn't understand why. They invested so much time in this. This was supposed to help elevate the whole women's division. And I think it did. But when you're trying to swing for the fences on everything else, why aren't you trying to swing for the fences for the AEW women's title and putting it near the top of the card and really telling people, like, this is a big deal? You put it second on the card after, like, a 12-man battle royal, and they got the crowd. They won that crowd over. It was a hell of a match, and it was one of the best matches on the show. And my frustration was that, like, the faith wasn't behind them in the promotion the way it should have been. And maybe it was fine, the faith that there was. But I just wanted, like, their biggest, longest, most invested angle to feel on the biggest card of the year like it was the biggest fucking deal for the women.
Yeah.
That's it.
The way, yeah, I get what you're saying. I look at it like
after a year, right? You're telling me that after a year, this is the second match on the card. I may have been looking forward to this all the time. I paid $50 and thinking, wow, this might be the semi-main event. This is going to be such a big deal. Oh, it's the second match on the card. They're telling me that if I cared about that more than anything else, that's how much, like, every other match on the card, the Mercedes stuff that they've been building for 6 weeks is more important than this. The Sammy or the Darby versus Jack Perry that they've been building for 3 weeks is more important than this. Those are the things that they are telling you with these things. Sting could have been at any point in that show.
Half of the card.
You could have done it at any point after the Casino Gauntlet.
You could have, but I see how they thought. I mean, I think the idea of a company building a pay-per-view from right or wrong, and I think wrong, building it from the undercard up, each match is successively a bigger match until the main event, is kind of an outdated concept. I disagree with it. I
definitely live off the New Japan.
I'm definitely, I'm with you on that page, and I'm I think the way though that the modern wrestling, I hate to use that "this is what wrestling is" thing, but that if that's the issue, then that's the issue, But I do agree. If they had swapped it, it would have been better. I think that the match felt bigger than Mercedes Britt. I think it felt like the people cared about it more than Mercedes Britt. I also see, right or wrong, how in Tony Khan's mind, on paper, there is absolutely no way that Mercedes versus Britt isn't the bigger match between the two.
Sure. There was a point at Forbidden Door where in our minds, the consideration was Toni Storm versus Mariah May and Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland were the number 1 and number 2 matches for this card.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then at some point, it became the third most important, fourth most important, fifth most important. And it happened naturally, and it happened deliberately by this promotion. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that there was a point where it was like equal footing. Both of these people won their title. They both had hot angles coming out of winning those titles. Like, it was a big deal. And then one of them got the focus, and then one of them kind of didn't.
I think the only thing I would disagree on is I don't think Tony ever had that match as a bigger match to him than the Mercedes and Britt match or the Ospreay MJF match. I think at best he always had it third or fourth.
Then he sold the audience a false bill of goods, and he's going to have to deal with that moving on. You know what I'm saying? That's my whole argument. If he's devalued this title by putting it where it is, and until he's able to synchronize Mercedes and having that title, which is ultimately what he's going to want.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like, this is going to be
having
a disconnect.
Right. Having your well, honestly, it's a little bit like having Ospreay as your international champion.
Yes,
because he's the
you
biggest.
don't. You have
it's the
you
same
don't have a
problem.
world champion if you have two people built like. treat
It's
it
just
like
made
they're-
worse because you have such a smaller division. And to me, the mistake that they made that knocked it down for me was they had Toni appear too soon. She came back too soon. How long was it since Forbidden Door? What 2 months?
That was
8 weeks or so.
Last week in June. Yeah, so we're looking at like
So 7-8 weeks.
sure.
They could have kept Toni off screen, out of the picture for a month, and just only focused on Mariah instead of like just having the feud, have Mariah win, and just spend 4 weeks doing nothing but having Mariah become the killer of the division. Have her bring in Riho, have her destroy Riho, bring in all the people that we've loved all this time, and have Mariah
Robin,
just
Renegade, whatever,
decimate
just
them.
Kill them all. Kill them all.
Just kill them all, and the whole time be talking crap about how she took Tony's spot, and she's the new, she's taking this. Don't do the cosplay stuff, just be the new vicious killer, because I think Mariah plays that role really well. And
what I would jump
focus
on
on making her a big deal, and then about 3-4 weeks before you have maybe even have Mariah demanding the title because she took her out and she's never going to come back. And so you should just give me the title now. And then you have Toni come back like 3-4 weeks, and then you compress it. Cause to me, what they messed up with, what I think like you guys feel, not just the time placement, but what they did was that they just sort of brought Toni back right away. And then they just sort of rinsed and repeated for several weeks. And I agree with that.
The thought that I had was they pulled the trigger on Mariah turning on Toni too early. If you had waited about 3 or 4 weeks, given Mariah a couple of wins in which she's increasing her viciousness against like defeating her opponents, while Toni is completely oblivious to it, then you actually have the contract signing where you're putting it to paper that this thing's finally official, and then you do the shoe attack at the contract signing, and you write like the contract with the shoe like stiletto and blood. Then you have the 3 or 4 week where Toni like Storm gets her mojo back, and then you have the match.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you would have had your timing, but this is all.
Yeah,
I love the match. I loved it. I thought it was great. I am just frustrated at how little support I felt that they did not. That they should have had more building this matchup. That's it.
I get that, and I think by and large, I think a lot of what my frustration has been over the last several weeks is believing that, is this going to deliver? Yes. And what is a build to do to help it deliver? And not that you can phone it in because it's a sure shot, because I think I agree with you that they thought, oh, this is done. Wipe our hands. Mariah and Toni is good to go. We don't need to spend as much time on it as we did other things. I agree with that. But when I look at today's show, did everything, I mean, by and large, the main things deliver what they need to deliver, and did the fans respond to it the way you hoped they would? I think they did.
Yes.
So to me, that it's like, was it pretty getting there? No, but they absolutely got there.
Yeah.
All right. In the interest of time,
Tony Khan had a vision for this show and what the finish line was going to look like, and it was absolutely atrocious how he got here. It was just an ugly mess.
That's part of it too. Is I would say ugly, you say atrocious, and that's the difference. Probably.
It was essentially a lot of things were sacrificed at the altar for Tony Khan trying to get this television deal and building up this card. And if you want to go back and look at these shows and the things that he hotshotted and the things that he prioritized, the things that he thought was going to get good ratings rather than properly building this pay-per-view, that's your big problem. And if he gets a great deal out of it and a great buy rate out of this show, I hope he does not take the wrong lessons from
that. Speaking of great ratings of buy rate.
Speaking of wrong lessons too.
Yeah. Hook is once again the FTW champion, defeating Chris Jericho. My gosh. This is the black eye on this show I think Hook's career went backwards in the last 2 weeks. I think more has been done to damage this guy's career and future. And I don't know if you want to put it as, you could phrase it and say he got exposed. I think there was even more than that. I think the nature of the gimmick, the nature of the story, it did not serve him well. Jericho's gimmick, this was just a big Hook got really hurt by this program. And I don't know if it's anybody's. I think it is more due to the fact that he got in over his head, and they exposed the limitations of Hook by putting him in a traditional wrestling program, and he's not ready to actually do that.
I don't even know if it's that he's not ready. I think it's that they're not confident in him, and now everyone sees that they're not confident. That they have to do these gimmick matches and all these other things and these trash. And God, they were throwing those cricket balls around the ring, and I was like, fucking hit. Don't hit anybody in the audience.
All I could think is someone knocking a vertebrae out.
Or you think about John Muse getting hit with a water bottle by Chris Jericho at a scrum. I mean,
yeah.
that's the first thing I thought.
There was a moment. There was a moment in the match where Hook legitimately scared Jericho because he picked up one of those balls and reached back to throw it, and Jericho like winced up like this because he thought he was going to actually throw it at his head, and he threw it down at his foot instead.
I mean, we had a better version of a Jericho match with a guy with his eye poked out with Moxley 4 years ago,
right?
When Moxley won the
both
title.
of them faking.
It was one of those, screw it, if I can't do it with one eye closed, I might as well do it with both eyes open. Surprise, got you. And when Hook, you couldn't take it off when the bell started.
Right.
And it was just like, you're not going to attack an eye that has a bandage over it already?
Yeah, he had to actually play blind for a point in the match where he's feeling around like it's a Prince of Darkness match. And before he literally takes it off and then looks at the camera and says, "I can see," just in case you didn't get it.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I hated this match.
Big Bill got taken out by Jericho while he was trying to hold Hook and escaped and got clobbered with a chair.
And that was the only heel heat that Jericho really had, was when he took out Big Bill.
Taz came up behind Brian Keith and gave him the Taz mission, and then that gave.
Okay. I was fine with that. That's how the feud needed to end, and I thought it was a fine use of Taz. And I, you know, as the real person in me, liked the fantasy camp element of Taz and his son getting that moment. There, I was totally fine with Taz doing that. It's just that the rest of the feud did not deserve to have that good of a moment.
There was a payoff that Taz needed to get his comeuppance on them for having him booted from the arena for a number of shows. Lady B mentioned that there was an awkward media scrum moment when a reporter said the FTW championship was brought into AEW as a joke or as an insult. Well,
oh wow, what was the response to that?
I would love to know if Lady B can let us know, because we're not really following that right now.
I hope that they retire this title someday. It's just a gimmick. It's fine. It's basically the $1 million belt.
If it's not a joke, what is it? Right? Like
it's a vanity title. I
don't take it seriously at all. Like,
right.
Whatever.
It's a match. It's a prop for Hook to have or to fight someone for, and that's it. And so
I'm fine with Jericho as a performer. I'm fine as Hook as a performer. I am no longer fine with these two in a program together, and I do not have interest particularly in what they do next, but my mind can be changed.
The one plus out of this whole program is that Brian Keith has shown that he is a player and can and will put himself into whatever you give him, and that hopefully the fans of Cardiff and London have upped Big Bill's stock just in the last 2 weeks, because I think if anyone came out the better for this program, it was Big Bill and Brian Keith.
I tell you, I was sold on Big Bill after his Impact run a few years back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Morrison.
I was on board. I was on board with that. At that point on, I'm like, you get it, guy. You get after it. Lady B said that TK was very upset about the FTW championship. I would understand. He probably is.
Good. He probably was. He was probably very insulted. So, yeah. All right.
All right.
This match, FTR versus the Young Bucks versus the Acclaimed for the tag team titles. I missed a little bit of because I realized that I had not eaten anything and decided to make myself some lunch while it was on, so I was a little distracted. This was all three teams were very over when they came out. The Bucks
The Acclaimed was
straight up doing a Sergeant Pepper gimmick. Do what?
Yes, I thought the Acclaimed. I was very surprised at the reaction to the Acclaimed. Like every so often, they just get a reaction. You're just like, oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Someone in the Discord said this is why they're always in the tag team title scene,
Yes.
and I get that. And this is actually the most interested I've been in the Acclaimed since before they won their first titles. So probably for the last 2 years. And it seems like Max Caster is actually trying to change up the gimmick a little bit, be a little harder edge, a little more of like a the rapper that he's impersonating than just the straight up scissor gimmick.
He wants the explicit lyric sticker next to his face wherever he goes.
Right. Yeah. So I liked them. I really didn't have much problems with this match. It was a pretty standard triangle tag team match. Other than the fact that it kept us from having a classic, but I also feel bad for FTR and Young Bucks living under the shadow of being the arguably the two best teams in history, supposedly in AEW lore, and having to have the best tag team match ever anytime they're in the ring with each other. I thought this was fine. Did a lot of the spots that they like to do these days where different partners team up to do each other's moves with each other. Max Caster was on a shatter machine at one point, and he also did the BET trigger. The BET triggers. That's a whole other show. The BTE trigger.
The being the elite, the executive VP trigger, EVP trigger.
Yeah, EVP. Yes.
Yes, I couldn't remember what it was.
It used to be the BTE. Yeah, the EVP trigger. The Acclaimed were probably the most over team in the match. It seemed like they seemed to that, and then the Bucks just won. It was a fine undercard tag title match. No complaints, but also was not super memorable to me.
Every team going into this felt cold.
Yeah, totally.
FTR.
I would say the Acclaimed were a little heated up, but
they've been working on the Acclaimed. But when you were watching the Acclaimed in this feud, you felt like when the Bucks were there and FTR was there, the Acclaimed were just kind of there on the side. They were always trying to get in on it rather than right. Hey, don't you understand? We're here too. And so when they got that reaction, I was like, damn, every so often they get a reaction that I'm not expecting. Mm-hmm. And I watched this match, and it's a day at the office for the Bucks, and it's a day at the office for FTR. It's not their best matches they've ever had, not by far, but they came in motivated with their working boots on, and they put in a 15-minute match of all the things they normally do, and their timing was crisp. And when it was their turn to do their shit, they did their shit. And then the Acclaim came in and they did their stuff too, and everybody was fine. I thought Bowens was great, but no title should have changed. The entire tag team division just feels like it's in a period of suspended animation. Nothing's really going to change until you have that amazing tag team that comes in. It's oh, you got to belt these guys. And we had another tag team that showed up, and I've been following these guys for a long time. I can't honestly say that it lit my world on fire, nor the crowd at Wembley when they showed up.
I think they were genuinely surprised at how little they were recognized. I don't know if they were just not that recognized or just not that excited. It clearly was set up to be a big reaction. But as someone, I think John Muse pointed out, this is what happens when you're booking in a bubble and you think that, in that probably would have played better in Cardiff than it did here. I would say
there's a lot of people that kind of checked out on UK wrestling when a lot of these guys went to NXT UK. Like, if
Mhm.
you weren't following Rev Pro, WWE came in and
Right.
they took a bunch of guys and they decimated that UK scene. I'm not necessarily sure that fandom was a fandom that continued to follow NXT UK going into them. And it was like,
No.
okay, I'm not interested. I know who you guys are, but I don't really care. And
and when they were on NXT Prime or NXT whatever, that was at the point where AEW fans were like hating NXT.
Sure.
I mean, not quite the 2.0 days, but like, this is not the Motor City Machine Guns. This is not a team. They're a great team. I think Grizzled Young Veterans are a great team. I think they're a great ad. I think they're really good. I think it would have been nice for them to cut like a 15-second promo, like when they come in, enter the ring, introduce themselves, and just do that shtick. I think they would have been slightly more over, just, call them Liverpool's finest and all that. But yeah, just a mistake. That was just probably looked good on paper. And I think everyone was surprised, so I can't really blame them.
So the Young Bucks retained, Grizzled Young Vets came out, so we're being completely clear with everybody what happened here.
Yeah, sorry.
The audience just, like, you could hear a fart in the room is essentially what could happen. Behind, like, take note and everything. I don't even remember what they kept yelling over and over and over again, but it was just one of those, like,
on site. They were yelling.
On site. I like the Grizzled Young Vets, but they needed to build up their repertoire and their catalog and their knowledge with these fans before they got here, because what they've done since they've left WWE is not enough to blow this audience away.
Right.
They need to be in Japan. They need to be in Impact. They need to be in these places having these matches that are like, man, have you seen these guys? They're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing that. Tony brought them on, and now they have to start from a negative square one to get where they are, because the assumption of what they already were, and they're not.
Right. And that's why I think treating it as a debut more than a surprise return, like Zack Sabre or something, would have been better. Just have them come out, announce their names. They're from Liverpool. They're, soon to be, and all that stuff. Then it's okay, great. Then we're reacting to the promo, not just like this is probably second only to the Butcher and Blade entrance as far as like worst tag team debut in AEW history. But hey, they'll probably do some great matches with FTR, so I'm fine with their being here. I'm just unfortunate that they were delayed in this way. Okay, then they did the announcement of the Forbidden Door in London. We already talked about that. And then Justin Roberts announced the Casino Gauntlet match to a huge pop, which this match is over.
Yes.
And I think up until the last 3 seconds of this match, it was really over.
They killed the match in 3 seconds.
Because they ramped up. I mean, they leveled up this match a lot up until the very end. They have 12 of the alleged 21 people came in. Poor Evil Uno were expecting him to get a title shot out of this for not making it in. But all the people that you expected to be in, I think, did make it in. I'll just list off the people first.
You got the list? Okay.
Orange Cassidy started the match with a weird entrance video where he literally drops out of the sky onto the street.
Like he was abducted by aliens. Oh, yeah. It was the Mr. Bean entrance.
Oh, see, I didn't pick that up.
It took me a second, but it was straight up the Mr. Bean.
Okay, that's fine.
The British comedy with their own accent.
I miss Jane as his entrance music. Him, then Okada was number 2. Big pop for him. I've always thought Orange Cassidy versus Okada is like the sleeper, low key, like great match that they have in their pocket they haven't done yet, and they didn't really give away too much of that here, but it did show me, I think, that Sunday could be a really good one. I loved Orange Cassidy countering the Rainmaker by keeping his hand in his pocket. That made me laugh. And then the first like huge surprise pop of the match. I can't think of anyone. Did you hear anyone predict that Nigel McGuinness would be in the gauntlet?
No.
There was a lot of discussion of him. Will he ever come back? Will he get his Danielson match?
Is he gonna challenge Danielson for?
Is he gonna challenge Danielson? All that stuff. So I don't think anybody expected that. I did not hear anyone predict it or anyone spoil it. Enormous, molten. That was probably, other than the main event finish, as far as someone coming out, I mean,
Ospreay,
I would say it was bigger than Jamie's.
Ospreay, maybe.
Yeah, Ospreay. Yeah. I guess it was bigger than anyone.
That got a good one too.
Yeah. So Nigel comes out. Go ahead.
There was a different reaction. There was like glee.
Yes.
Of the unexpected, which is just different. It hits different. Like you can't compare it.
Right. And it was great. You know what? This is probably the best case scenario for Nigel McGuinness getting a re-debut in this setting. This is probably the best he could have possibly expected. So he comes out, he looks fantastic shape. He immediately squares off with Kazuchika Okada. So it's like, great. You talk fantasy camp booking. If you're not going to get Bryan Danielson, that's great. He does pretty well against all of them. Maybe too good, but I think him coming in hot and impressing people was fine for the amount.
Really similar to the Edge return at Royal Rumble, if you're looking for it.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I like the first thing it made me think of was that one year when Mr. Perfect came back in like 2002 or 2003. In the Royal Rumble, made it to the Final Four. Like it was one of those things where it was like, oh, he can still go. Yeah. So he was great. Kyle O'Reilly came out fine. And then Zack Sabre Jr. came out. I think a lot of people were hugely pleased and surprised to see him, especially since I guess the night before he would have wrestled for Rev Pro, right?
He wrestled Hechicero and got his win back.
That's right.
Hechicero,
I need to watch that.
CMLL.
I kind of expected Hechicero in this match, actually.
Oh yeah, that would have been kind of fun. Ran out of time, probably. Maybe he was the next guy on the.
Yeah, he might be the next guy.
No, just Zack Sabre Jr. has got his stars on the rise, man, and
he's a superstar, man. He's an elite star.
Just some of the moves that he was able to do in the ring and how quickly he could transition from move to move. I think there was one move where he had him almost in an Okada roll, but the lightning quick way that he was able to move his legs from the outside to the inside of, I think, Kyle O'Reilly was just like, you're so good.
Yeah. And you could tell people. One little moment when Zack Sabre Jr. came out, I loved, was when he walks to the ring. Kyle O'Reilly and Orange Cassidy part the ropes for him to let him in, and he just walks right past them and gets in on the other side of the ring.
No, sunshine.
Yeah, that was such a cocky little touch. I love that. And I also loved how they treated it. Like immediately they said, this is Zack Sabre Jr. He just won the G1 tournament and he is the number one contender for the IWGP Championship. Like they immediately brought you up to speed and treated him like this is one of the 4 or 5 best wrestlers in the entire world. Like,
can I trap you with something right now?
Sure.
Right here, right now.
You're going to complain about Takeshita? Yeah. Hold.
Where the hell was the video package? Where the hell
when he comes back they could do it.
Not even a mention when they did Forbidden Doors. Like, and one of our stars was over at competing for the G1 as we get ready for Forbidden Door next year. Nothing. They got no plans for the guy. I hope he. I know.
That's the bigger problem. To me, that's the bigger problem. They should have had a place for him right away. With the video packages. To me, there's no point in doing the video packages. They're not going to do anything with them. So to me, the problem is they don't have a plan for him.
Correct. All right. Speaking of a strong plan, we had Roderick Strong as the next person in the.
Yes. Right before that, though, there was a really unexpected moment. There was one of those like, oh, this didn't occur to me how awesome this would be, which is when the ring cleared and Zack Sabre Jr. and Nigel McGuinness faced off in the ring, presumably for the first time.
That was pretty special.
And that, yes, special is the right word.
You felt the audience buzz.
Yes, you felt people say, "Oh my gosh, I never
This is a video
This
game
is a
match.
generational
Never
match
thought
that
you'd see this. Yeah, exactly. So that
I mean, that's
I love
something
that.
I could see you doing a Wrestle Dynasty. Like that's the kind of match
Yeah.
that I could see like Nigel McGuinness getting a dream shot somehow, like earning a
Yeah.
title and Scott
Yeah.
Sabre Jr.'s the champion, and then you do that as one of those matches that you can give away on an AEW New Japan pay-per-view.
While we're on, so real quick, while we're on Nigel, do you think
Yes.
there's a one-off, or do you think they'll do anything with him?
I think it's a one-off. I thought if it were me, I would make this like Pat McAfee level, like 1 or 2 matches a year.
I think what they could do, before I think he could probably do one more match with someone like a Kyle O'Reilly, where it's like a, you know, he's getting his thing back. I think you could have him call out Danielson and do the Danielson match on a Collision, or like as a TV main event, a one-off thing. Let him have that match, do that match, because I think it would be a good match for Danielson to have before he winds up as champion. That would be a good little pit stop. That's a short 2-week program, leading to whatever his next thing is.
If Danielson truly like hangs it up and he's like, I'm done, like I'm not doing anything more than 1 or 2 matches every couple of years, in a couple of years, Nigel McGuinness is now shot up to the top of my list as the guy that they both should have a match with each other to be their last match. Both of them. You know, like
I don't know about the last match, but
you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
It's like when it's time to hang up when it's time for Danielson to be done and hang up his boots, Nigel should be the guy to retire him, and Nigel should retire as well. Like, because the way that
I'm not there with you on that.
I'm saying like 2 or 3 years from now, where Nigel can get this out of his system and he can have some matches, and if he wants to keep going, great. But he stopped wrestling for a long time.
Yeah.
And so you have to be mindful of like what that does to a body and what you can do when frankly you're at our age, man. You need to, like, he's not been doing this actively for the last 15 years. So there is a sense into that
and
like,
it showed a little bit today.
And he looked great in a casino gauntlet in which he only had to do a few spots here or there.
Right.
But if you're thinking that like all of a sudden, like Nigel McGuinness is a guy that you can start counting on to like wrestle 1 match a month, like even that I feel is asking way too much. So you need to pick your spots. You need to think about like, could he have a match at Forbidden Door? Could he have a match at, you know, one of the big pay-per-views? Like, what pay-per-views do you pick and choose? Like, who do you have it with? You have to be really selective. But I think if you do that Danielson match, it has to be a big stipulation.
I don't agree with that. I am not very sentimental about Nigel McGuinness. I think a lot of people, I don't want to say don't hold him in high regard, but he's not as big a deal to me as he is to a lot of people. And I watched those matches with Danielson. To me, that's not one of his, I mean, he's one of the many stops that Bryan Danielson had in an amazing career. And he had a good career. He had a good run as champion, but Nigel McGuinness is not historically that big of a deal to me, he should never be on a pay-per-view. If he's going to come back, he was on a pay-per-view to me tonight. It would be, well, I know, but I mean, in a big deal singles match is what I mean. To me, it's probably, unless he is like coming back full time and is like going to really make a go at it. If you're just going to do a few matches, to me, it's like do a couple of Dynamites to give him a little bit of credibility. And then you could do a 20-minute Bryan Danielson match as a main event of a TV show. And then that's probably about it. I don't want a grizzly young veteran him where it's like you get him in over his head where I just don't think that many people have that much of, other than the British fans today. And I could be wrong, but I don't think most AEW watchers really think of him more than anything as an announcer. It'd be more of a Pat McAfee situation than a returning hero.
I wonder what the narrative will be and the perception is after today, because there's definitely an argument to be made that prior to today, there just wasn't an awareness of what you could do with him. And there was just a pocket of diehards that were like, Nigel can do this, Nigel can do that, Nigel and Danielson, blah, blah, blah. Like just hyper focused on it. And I think now that we've seen Nigel in the sphere, challenging for a title that Danielson just now won, I think that there is some kind of link there. And I think more than anyone else, there's a link for Tony Khan. Like in his lexicon of wrestling history, like this is a big deal to him. And so when
I don't doubt that.
When you're looking at it, you have to think of like, well, what does Tony Khan think about it rather than what he thinks his audience? Because he might be thinking of himself as the fan service rather than the audience.
Oh, yeah. This is a man who just put Christian in the title picture instead of that. So I would have actually been happier with Nigel actually sneaking a win out. I think if he had snuck a win out on that gauntlet and it would have tipped the main event.
It would have tipped the main event, absolutely.
But
Christian also
to me, I would a little, yeah, for sure. Anyway, back to the match. Roddy Strong, Mark Briscoe came in, and then Adam Page came in. House of Fire just started destroying people. Really cool spot where he was going for a the clothesline deal.
The buckshot lariat?
The buckshot. I just went blank. Went for a buckshot orange, ducked it, went for the flying orange punch, and immediately got put into a dead eye, which is a really cool spot. Then Jeff Jarrett came out. Another, like, how crazy how over this guy was in London. They loved Jarrett. Came in, faced off with Hangman Page. He was super over. They brawled a lot. Then the debut of Irish sensation Rick O'Shea happened. Ricochet, I think people were anticipating it. I think people were expecting it. So when it happened, it wasn't like the even like the Zack Sabre or the Nigel response. It was like, hey, it was like more of a payoff pop. Very excited to see him. He was very excited to be there. For some reason, he went to Christopher Daniels tailor for his tights, wearing pants for the first time I've ever seen. And then did a lot of Ricochet stuff, and he seemed fired up. He seemed probably about 10% faster than he saw him on Speed, even in WWE. He definitely
had a little bit of charisma to his like body movement.
Yeah, there's a little swagger in there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of jazz and jazziness into him.
and that was fun. I liked that. And Christian then entered. And everyone just kind of went, oh,
and
gosh.
the air sucked out of the entire earth.
Yeah.
Anyone watching this show collectively had the air sucked out of the room that they were in.
And my first thought was, oh, God, he's going to win.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people did, which was actually a really clever spot because as he was coming to the ring, Ricochet was set up to dive inside the ring on someone and instead ricocheted and landed on Christian Cage, which was a huge pop. So I think they knew what they were doing when Christian came out. Finally got this face off between Okada and Hangman. I think Hangman was going for a cover and Okada just gave him the most FU kick to the head to break up the pin. It was just, great. As much as Okada's getting misused, his personality is just delightful in AEW. So they finally came to blows, and then Jarrett came in with a huge guitar shot on Hangman. Then Luchasaurus entered, not Killswitch, which was a little over clever because I was starting to say, I think there was just recently a little discourse about the history of people who turned without a turn.
Right.
And I was typing in the Discord, this is one of those turns without a turn, and then realized, well, that's because it's not. And so Luchasaurus was faking everyone out. And just had the worst ending to this match you could possibly have. I thought for a second he was going to do the finger poke of doom, which would have been even worse. But
I had a thought when this match ended that they took a show, and this was the pivot point for people that might be like, this is one of the best shows I've ever seen, or I'm having a really good time with the show. And it it left a taste in their mouth that for some people they might not have been able to get out of for the rest of the show. And I thought it was a risky proposition, but I told you earlier where I thought it might lead, in which, you kind of have to get the ball rolling here the way that you're doing it, because they got the belts taken off of him. Like, he doesn't have any belts anymore, and he's going for a belt instead. And Copeland's been out like 3 or 4 months so far. So, this math is starting to kind of get itself back together.
When did Copeland go out? Was it May? Was it Double or Nothing?
I think it was April. I don't think no, it might have been May. Double or Nothing. But that's like 3
Double or
months.
Nothing? Yeah, 3 months.
3 or 4 months. But if you're getting the ball rolling, so that's 2 more months, before like it's just one of those things. I think by the end of the year, and you kind of have to get this thing.
Christian and Copeland is the kind of storyline where it's like, it's so clear kind of where they're going, but when you add up all the steps you have to do to get there, it seems like it's going to be a long time away. Because it's like, to get them teaming together, it's like all the little moves they have to do to get that done.
It's like when you're questing in a video game and all of a sudden you have all the, you have 10 extra steps that you have to get, and you're like, all right. And then you're just taking the long way around to get to where you're just like, there got to be an easier way to do this.
Yeah. It's just so bizarre to me, because I've been spending so much time looking at, the world title scene, the main event scene in AEW is so strong right now that they have 6 to 8 people they could conceivably push into those spots and have paths to it, with between Hangman, Swerve, Danielson, Darby, and that's 4, but it would not take a lot to get Ospreay back in. MJF could go in at any time. There's so many viable paths they could go over the next several months toward the end of the year, and none of those included Christian to me. And
they've done an excellent job rehabilitating the upper mid card.
Yeah,
and Christian is not somebody that
Christian is not part of it.
He doesn't. He like you said, he's the evil of the promotion in a lot of ways.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great comparison.
He has a role to serve.
Yeah,
and there's a place for him on the roster and a certain level that you want him at. But when he starts exceeding that level, it becomes really frustrating.
Right.
It just becomes really frustrating, because you're like, no, this is not where he should be.
He very much is the House of Torture of AEW. Okay, now we're getting to the real top matches. We talk about match placement. Will Ospreay versus MJF, 4th from the top. I would not have predicted, but they clearly feel like they needed to cool the crowd down from that Christian win, I guess, or maybe make them feel better after being so mad. That actually probably is more it, of let's wash the taste out of this Christian win out by putting their favorite guy on. Will Ospreay, brought to you this evening by Assassin's Creed, available
coming November 15th.
November 15th. Pretty blatant
it's not
product
the first
placement.
time he's done an Assassin's Creed, to be fair.
That's true.
New Japan, his New Japan entrances are
very tied to that. At least this time someone's probably getting paid for it more. So
his famous Kenny Omega match at Tokyo Dome was an Assassin's Creed homage as well.
That's right. Yeah, where he was actually dressed as a character or something like that.
Yeah, in green this time, but he was red this time. Yeah.
So it was cool. He came out great. I thought great entrance with the martial arts crew and all that, and
the breaking crew that should have been at the Olympics.
Right. Yeah, they would have brought it home. Assassin's Creed logo on his tights. One of the notes I made is Ospreay knows how to do big match entrances. He knows how to play it to where it's like, this is a big deal. I'm serious. I've got my game face on. I'm playing to the crowd, but it's like, I'm not just going through the motions of doing an entrance the way I would if I were cutting a promo in Dynamite. Like he plays the moment really well. And then we had the most ridiculous entrance this side of Rocky IV by MJF, full top hat, flag bearers, Lex Luger trunks, the whole bit. Yeah, just ridiculous. The giant
Apollo
flag.
Creed, WrestleMania, or Rocky III. The vibe, the energy.
I mean,
America.
I'm surprised they didn't have yeah, that's right. So that would have been great if they had licensed that song. So he comes out, they drop the streamers, all this, and this is about the time I was like, man, they need some leaf blowers out there or something to clean up this entry, right? But after Okada comes out. This is a really great match. I don't think it touched the first one.
Nope.
No, it didn't. And I think a lot of that is because it was more of a story match.
I don't think it was either of their best matches that they've had this year in the last couple of years, the best match that they had with each other, but it was perfectly fine and it won the crowd over in the
crowd's 100% into this match.
Like, this is what you do when you don't want to peak the crowd before the main event, but you have a guy that the crowd is going to go absolutely nuts for. It's like CM Punk at a WrestleMania and he's not the main event kind of thing. Like, there's a certain amount that you can go with the guy, but if he's not the guy to win, he's not the guy to win. And they've made it clear this year that Will Ospreay wasn't going to be the primary focus, but they did everything in their power, in their power to give him a moment.
Right.
Frankly, this match should have opened the show, but they couldn't do that because the Assassin's Creed entrance required complete darkness.
Yeah.
And so, but MJF, that would have been the perfect match to get the crowd electrified. Near the end of the match, you had the payoff of Daniel Garcia coming back out to give MJF the comeuppance. You kind of close that loop because I don't personally expect Daniel Garcia to get a win over MJF, but him causing MJF the international title on the biggest, on one of the biggest stages he's ever been on is a certain amount of karmic retribution that I think is exactly what this promotion will allow Daniel Garcia to get.
Yeah. This was clearly MJF's loss for the year that they cashed in on. And one of the critiques I had of this match was it felt like this match was booked from the perspective of MJF's story versus Will Ospreay's story. Even though you would say, what's the story of this feud? Someone would probably say, oh, it's Will Ospreay. Can he do the killer move that he's afraid to do and be the assassin again? But really, this match was booked. Everything made sense if you thought, well, the story of this match is MJF finally getting his comeuppance, which I think is part of what made the match not as good, even though a lot of people I was happy to see Daniel Garcia again. They did not pay off the thing with MJF saying his ring was stolen. I thought that you would see Garcia pull it out of his pocket in Wardlow style. But they didn't. And it just seemed that the match, and this is kind of the issue with MJF, is even though Will Ospreay is deservedly probably the biggest star they have in the company, was definitely the biggest star in the company tonight. Well, maybe at least the second biggest star.
Star they had.
Yeah. That match was all about MJF. And and I think that hurt it a little bit.
Masterfully protecting himself through this entire feud. He knew he was losing this match, but he did everything in his power to be a star during this entire thing. I got to give Garrett Gonzalez a lot of credit. If you think about it, MJF lost this match on a move that was banned. So he's always got that in his back pocket, that he didn't actually lose to a legal move kind of thing. That's how you do it when you want to save face and do all these things. He knew what he was doing. He knew how to get himself out of this situation. Like you said, he's probably not going to lose again for another year, if so. And it's like, I'm glad that Ospreay is outside of the MJF orbit. There are certain few wrestlers in AEW that suck the oxygen out of the room in every program that they have. Jericho and MJF are the two top people that perpetrate this issue.
The bubbles,
the bubbles, the vortex, whatever you want to call it.
The vortex. That's the
So when people I care about and are invested are in programs with them, I find myself less invested because the priorities shift to not making this guy over, but making sure we keep both guys strong, which are two completely different goals.
Right. So thinking out ahead, MJF probably will be world champion at some point.
Sure.
I'm thinking Darby will end the year as world champion.
Okay.
We can get to why later on in his match. One of the critiques this year of the way the card was, and I think in hindsight I can see why Toni did what he did, but people were like, why are you not putting the world title on Will Ospreay at Wembley this year? And I think the thinking was, well, you can do it next. There were a lot of really smart people saying, you know what, you can do it next year. Well, guess what? There's not a Wembley Stadium show next year. At some point, Will Ospreay has to be the champion in this company. So the question is, this year established the idea that you don't have to have the top matches be New Japan versus AEW at Forbidden Door. Forbidden Door is in London next year. Do you think that's a worthy show of titling Will Ospreay next August?
Yeah.
A year from now.
I think.
And is MJF the guy you have as champ when he does it?
No, I think you have somebody else.
Because I could see a path where if they put the title on Darby, MJF makes sense to be a guy to beat him because they have that history of Darby never able to get past MJF. MJF can hold it until.
I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I don't think there's anywhere but an AEW New Japan show in London where you don't give Will Ospreay the IWGP or the AEW title.
The AEW title, yeah.
Everything that he has ever done in Rev Pro, in New Japan, in AEW would lead to August, London, the biggest show of the year for a joint promotion. It's handed to you on a silver platter, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just a shame that it's not going to be.
You just have him win the Owen. That's all you do. And you know, and you just go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. We'll see how it plays out.
I don't know if that's what they would do, but given everything that I've seen of his career and the way that everything's lined up, it's like, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, to me, you have to. To me, it's like as a lock. It's if you're taking All In away, then to me, it's almost like a reason to put family. I almost said Family Reunion for some reason. Forbidden Door in London is because, well, we've got to have a show, a big show where we put Ospreay over for the title.
They wouldn't.
I think that's the right one to do.
They wouldn't do it because the G1 is right there and you have to keep the title protected. But I would love some kind of scenario where a New Japan wrestler had the AEW title and Will had to get it back and win it at Forbidden Door.
That would be really interesting. That would truly test the little brotherism of New Japan.
That would be
let that be a story.
That would be the true, like, this door swings both ways, and we're going to, like, capitalize on this relationship in a way that maybe people don't expect.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you want to get one of those young guys over, have them win the AEW title, and then have everyone pissed off like, this fucking guy won it?
Yeah, give it to Evil.
No.
Yeah, we get Evil versus Christian.
Honestly, if you had Shota Umino as a heel next year, and he had the AEW title, and Will had to beat Shota for the AEW title, and Shota was a bad guy, worst things in the world, man.
Yeah. That'd be wild.
All right, let's get back to another New Japan Strong title, but that wasn't defended tonight.
The one that Camille's carrying, you mean?
Oh man.
Yeah. So Britt versus Mercedes. I think it ended better than it started. I think they suffered from a little bit of letdown from the Will match. I think they would have been served well by swapping Darby and Jack or Britain. Ultimately, I think this probably should have been the second match on the show, but I think even if they had just swapped it with the Darby match, I think it probably would. I don't know. It probably would have felt even more like a palate cleanser. But, Britt came out, had a pretty basic entrance for her. She had a pretty blank face, but I think you could argue she had a little bit of pouty face.
Boo-boo face?
Yeah, boo-boo face. But, that's kind of her face when she's trying to be serious badass Britt anyway. So I don't know. I don't want to besmirch her for that. But then Mercedes had an entrance befitting All In, coming out in a horse and carriage complete with a corgi.
Royal corgis.
Yeah, royal corgis in her lap, which is amazing. Top
I would
notch
like
gear.
royal corgis.
Yeah. Not Julia.
Britt.
Yeah. It's the anniversary of Britt Baker and her Julia tights. That's what I wrote down. Camille looked awesome. Looked like a British gladiator or manservant type character for her. So they understood the assignment of like doing the this is a big show. You do the big entrance. You look different than you normally do. They both look fantastic. And then the match started, and I think Britt did okay. I think Mercedes carried her really well. Was not a great match. And a lot of it was, and this is what I felt a little bit during the build to it as well, other than the first few weeks. But the thing in this match was Mercedes knows how to do a big stadium match. Mercedes knows how to play to the rafters. She knows how to wrestle big. She knows how to emote big. She knows how to, because she's been in that situation so many times. She's been in a situation where she has had to carry a star into a star-making match. And even though Britt arguably is supposed to be a star at that level already, that's what she needed to do here. And Britt did not show personality, I thought, in this match at all. Like, Britt used to be the person who, like, she's got so much in-ring charisma. She's got so much connection with the camera and the fans that, like back in the day when Britt was on the come up, it was like, wow, she's got so much personality in her matches that it overlooks kind of her technical limitations. And in this match, I felt like Britt was just a dud. And I don't know if she was just, I don't know. She just wasn't the Britt she could have been.
This was her second match back, right?
Yeah.
She did a collision match that was whatever. I think she's rusty, and I think her confidence is gone. She was running that division. Like, she was, like, everyone went through her. Like, if a decision was made, like, it was what does Britt think about this? Mm-hmm. And she's not that anymore. And I think it might be tied to what we see in the ring as well. Like that self-assuredness, that confidence, that's something that's very real to a performer. And right now she might not have it. And she was asked to, go in there and be in a position because she was a mainstay of that division for a long time. And she was the one that they relied on. And so it was naturally like, hey, this is one of our biggest stars of our entire promotion. And this is one of the biggest stars of all of wrestling. We're going to put them on the biggest stage. And when you look at it on paper, it all was supposed to work. It was all supposed to make sense. Everything was there.
Right.
This whole build, as much as the resources and efforts that they put into it, it just felt like it was the wrong shape for the hole that they were trying to put it in. And like I said, until we get Mercedes with the AEW women's title, the most important title that the women's division has is whatever Mercedes is holding. And that's how they treat it. And it's not the AEW women's title. If you had moved this down the card, I think it would have been received better if it was where Toni and Mariah was, and this match was the other way. When that Mariah and Toni match was over, it was like, Britt and Mercedes are in trouble. Like, it was just one of those, like, you have some work ahead of you. And I wasn't necessarily ready to throw in the towel because I've seen Mercedes do some amazing things with some amazing wrestlers. And I've seen Britt have matches that are just like, you outkicked your coverage. You did it.
Yep.
Fair play to you. And it wasn't a sure thing, and it wasn't a sure thing tonight.
Yeah, for sure. And I totally agree. I think the names on paper fooled Toni and whoever else is helping lay out the show into thinking it needed to be this high, and it didn't. And I think Mercedes Moné,
Mercedes opened the show. Like,
yes, because with that entrance, yeah, absolutely, it would have been a big time entrance. Because essentially that ladder match was kind of essentially a pre-show match almost, because of the way they set it up, and then kicking it off like the bulk of the card with Mercedes doing that big entrance, and then Britt coming out and swapping them in a way, like that would have been the moment more than the match. And so it would have been fine to be the second match on the show. Britt comes out, and then move the Toni Mariah thing higher. I agree. So it's a shame.
They swung for a home run. They just needed to advance for like a single or a double.
Yeah. So not much to take away from that. We'll see if Britt
better days ahead for both. Let's just be honest. Like, it wasn't a great day.
Maybe I don't know. Britt might just disappear again.
Britt's going to WWE.
I feel like.
Come on.
I've the thing you're talking about, I wonder if her heart's in it anymore. Like, I wonder if the last year has just been like, you know what? I have two great careers. Maybe I just need one.
I could imagine a change in location, a change in mentality, a change of environment, and a change of people would probably do her a world of good. And also being an environment where she has to work for her position rather than like, I had it and I lost it and I don't know if I can get it back again.
Yeah, I think for me, what I question is how bad does she even want to do that? I think she had a really good setup, because I wonder how much the story that they told on the show with Mercedes questioning, like, this is your plan B, your heart's not in it, you're not all in, is actual kind of where she's at. And,
she might be trapped though, because I hate to say it like this. But when you get to a certain level as a pro wrestler and you decide to walk away, the one question you get asked is what?
Yeah. When are you coming back? Yeah.
Like,
it's true.
If she's just having a tough time and she just needs to like take a break and she shows up somewhere else 6 months later, that's probably like one of the best things that could happen for her. In all honesty, like if she was done in 2 weeks and she showed up at the Royal Rumble and then she started having a program in WWE after the Royal Rumble, just rehabilitate her. That crowd will probably be into it. There are things that you could do. The talent there is such that she'll get better. There aren't a whole lot of people that can help her get better than where she's at without the WWE. Like,
she just wrestled,
frankly speaking.
Yeah.
So I know where I'm at with it. She's done all she could there, and for a variety of reasons, I wouldn't disagree, and I would completely understand if she felt like that wasn't the place for her anymore. Yeah. We'll see. I like her.
I hope that she finds a place. And then we'll see if Jamie gets paired up with Mercedes right out of the gate, or if they're gonna build to that a little bit. We will see soon.
Given how Hayter went out and how she's coming back, I would ease her back in a little bit before we make sure that she's good to go, because it would be pretty heartbreaking to full steam ahead and then we got to pump the brakes, because it was heartbreaking when she lost her title.
Yeah, and the way it's set up right now, she's got two paths that if she were to jump right into a title picture, there's two she could jump into. She could, if Toni's going to be out for a little bit, like if they're just going to kind of take her out for a little bit to let Mariah have a reign that's not revolved around the feud, they could slot Jamie in. But again, it puts the position where you've got two people, neither one of them should be losing yet.
Right.
And with Mercedes, I think Mercedes shouldn't be losing yet either. So
Mercedes shouldn't be losing, and Hayter should not be focused on any title that isn't the AEW Women's title. She should do her business with Saraya and Harley over the next month, and then make it clear that she wants the AEW title and she's going to fight her way for it. And then perhaps by the end of the year, if like all the stars are aligned, World's End, you put Jamie Hayter in a title match.
Yeah, it makes sense. All right. I was
Jack and Darby.
Shocked at first that I couldn't believe this was second to last, and then I realized at the end why it was.
Yes.
Because it wasn't them that was the semi-main. It was what happened afterwards. But this was a head scratcher, man. So Darby comes out, huge response. Does the skateboard entrance that he hadn't done for a while, where he skateboard down. I always loved when he did that, so I was pleased to see that. They made a note that he had glued thumbtacks to his face, which was wild, but
unnecessary.
A little unnecessary, but hey, it's part of the rules. Just like Britt's glove, if it's part of your outfit, it's legal, I guess. So I had the same thought about Saraya, when she had literally spikes sticking out of her bra,
sure,
her brassiere halter or whatever you want to call it on her top. I thought surely she's not going to wrestle someone in this, and she didn't. But Darby did. Darby had the tacks to his face, and Jack Perry comes out with a body bag. You couldn't really tell from it's like how big was his response when he came out. It didn't feel like he was like incredibly over, but it was like fine. Like everyone was like, great.
Perry or Darby?
Perry. Comes out with a body bag, and all I could think was talk about a bad build, because this feud to me has just been like, there's been steps, but it's just there. Like, it's just like they've hate each other. They always hate each other. So let's have a match. And, I know the TNT title is a big deal with Darby's character, but I don't know. It just felt like this match wouldn't. It's the kind of thing when I think through the steps, I'm like, well, no, he's been feuding with the Elite this whole time, going back all the way to Sting's retirement match. And even, the TNT title is a big part of his character. He and Jack Perry have always had a rivalry, a little bit of a rivalry going back to the Four Pillars thing. Like, it's all there, but it just felt like this match did not feel like the culmination of a feud. It just felt like, hey, these guys are feuding. Let's do a match.
They used the feint of the pillars, right? You had two of the pillars facing off on a match that you've never done before. And you were given this idea that these guys were just going to beat the hell out of each other. What you ended up getting was Darby got his ass kicked, like for the majority of this match. Like he got beaten pillar to post,
including beating himself.
Just destroyed. And this motherfucker is supposed to have a world title match, and he just lost to the TNT champion. Like, I am completely confused on the backward logic of this. I know,
but I'm telling you, I think Tony thinks he's the guy. I think Tony thinks Darby Allin is the guy.
He is 1,000% in the belief that he is the one guy that he knows will never go to WWE. And if that is your logic about who you're going to belt as your world champion, my friend, you have lost the plot. You have absolutely lost the plot.
I think he thinks he's the most loved star, in that he is the heart and soul of AEW. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm saying this is what I think Tony thinks. I think he loves Darby as much as he loves Christian. And I think he is setting him up the way that he's been presented this year. Really beginning with the Sting retirement program, is he has set up Darby to be the guy who's the ultimate underdog. The way he books the matches are, it's the classic, underdog booking that really shouldn't work, which is, he gets destroyed and gets destroyed and gets destroyed and somehow pulls out the win. Yeah. But just from what I've seen, I think the way he's positioning him, the way that he brings him in and gives him big moments, like he thinks this guy's the guy for now. And I think we're building to is probably, I don't know about, I think it's going to be Wrestle Dream.
Could be. He could get a short run, and then he could always be called a former AEW World Champion. I will tell you this. earlier this year, and fuck, if you're listening at 150, more power to you. You're going to get a great story out of this. I was out to dinner with
you could have just tuned in.
Dave Meltzer and a couple other people, and we were talking about what you do when Sting and Darby were like getting ready for like the Sting retirement thing. Like, how do you do this thing? And I asked him, like, do you have Sting wrestle Darby as one of those matches? And he's like, no, I don't think you do. It's like, would you ever have Darby win the world title in AEW? And he was quiet for a second, and he said, no, I don't think you need to. And I was like, if you did want to belt him, do you think it's necessary for him to beat Sting? And he said, no. So there's a weird, like, through line, like a small pathway, which it all kind of makes sense. You can or you can't. Ultimately, I don't think it matters if Darby is a world champion or not. I think his cachet and his legacy will probably be the same, except when people write that one thing, it says, and former AEW world champion. And there's a lot of cachet to that, and it might be a reward for loyalty and showing up and, you know, like having a broken nose and a broken foot and coming in and doing Anarchy in the Arena and just knowing, like, you're my guy and I'm going to reward you to show the rest of the roster, that kind of thing. Totally on the table. Does he need to? Nah.
I agree. I don't think he needs it. I don't think it needs the necessary part. I think there is a little bit of the Danielson mentality of, like, I can't let this guy give this much to the company and be who he is without giving the title, you know? So it's sort of a you deserve it thing, I think, on Tony's part. I just have that feeling. I just have that feeling that I think that Tony looks at him and says that is a signature star that we have, that no one has anything like him. Nobody else has anyone like him. And so
the odds of Darby winning the AEW world title are far higher than the majority of the AEW roster winning the AEW roster.
Yeah.
AEW world title. Like, he is in the top 10% likely people to win that title. Does that mean it's a guarantee? No, it does not, because, like, the percentage of people that win that title is 1 or 2 a year, and that roster is 100 people.
Right. And I think he's in a little bit of a mode where he's going to have some shorter reigns next. You know, already this year we've seen that, because we've got if you count Joe at the end of the year, you've got the long MJF reign, but then you've got Joe, Swerve, and now Danielson.
I consider Joe last year because he won in 2023. So you had MJF,
right, but it was just barely
Joe, and then you have Swerve and Danielson so far this year.
Yeah, so but I could see it anyway. The big point is Darby got destroyed here. Decisive win, could be more decisive, and then they went ahead and did this, like, what looked like motor oil, not gas, on his body bag.
It was definitely a little flat cola style.
There was some high viscosity in that. Poured something on his thing. Oh, I forgot to note that Perry brought in a bag of glass for a huge pop at that crowd, which got a big Cry Me a River song, followed by FCM Punk and AEW chants. So
you know that went 10 minutes. Like, we talked about it for 15 minutes already, but the match only went 10.
Right. They squeezed a lot in really fast. Basically it was just Darby dying for all our sins. And then the music hits to prevent, as you know, lights out, music hits, you can't light a lighter when that happens. And Sting came out, huge reaction. I mean, it would actually be kind of hard to actually nail down who got the big, because there's probably 5 or 6 like major reactions on this show where people were just... I
liked this one because you were told that he was gone, like he wasn't coming back. And so even when people were like, all right, well, Sting's gone, Darby's on his own. And so everything was leading towards, like, Sting should come out right now. And then he did, but it really only dawned on people within 2 or 3 minutes before it was supposed to happen, with the way that they laid it all out.
Yeah. And then the music came out, the Elite bail, and then Sting just sort of pulls him out of the bag, and that's it.
No physicality.
Yeah. No physicality. I don't think he'll get physicality. I don't think he'll get Sting back in the ring. I think he's only there to be a second, which is fine. And when Darby wins the world title,
he got hit in the back with the chair, but that's it. Like
Yeah.
Sting took a chair shot in the back.
Right. But I don't think you're going to see him do any more matches, which is good. All right. This I'm not objective about this match. I'm not going to.
Did you love it with all your heart?
This match. I teared up. I'm not going to lie.
It was a great match.
It was everything I hoped it would be. I had a few quibbles about the production of it, but yeah. And this was one of those matches, along with Mariah May, where I was engaged in a lot of frustrating discourse to me about the build, because I think there's a lot to criticize about how they told this story and how Bryan Danielson himself told this story. I think the story that Bryan Danielson thought he was telling was good. I don't think he did a good job of telling that story, and I don't think that other people who were collaborating with him on that story, meaning the production people and the commentators and all that stuff, were clear on the story that I think Bryan Danielson had in his head, which made it frustrating and hurt the build going in. I think it's a little like the Toni thing, where it was like, I can't imagine this going any better than it did in the ring and in the moment and everything like that. So they got where they needed to go. But it could have been an all-timer story of him. Yeah. The build in his mind. The thing that I got frustrated with people about was, and not personally, but just disagreement, was, I think in Bryan's mind, the story that he was telling was, I know this is the end. I want it to be the end, and I'm at peace at the end. I want to do this before it ends. This is the one last thing that I need to accomplish before I do it. And struggling with those motivations, knowing my heart is after this. My heart is no longer in the ring, but I want to accomplish this last goal. And I know, and him realizing, I will never achieve this unless I can put this to the side and trying to reconcile it. And I think in his mind, this is based on what they did in the ring. I think in his mind, the story was, it wasn't that I had to put the family aside to be all in on the match. It was that I had to get the family all in on the match and use the love for them to overcome the thing. That's a very nuanced story to tell. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he did a good job of communicating it. I think he really screwed himself over with a lot of people who pay a lot of attention by having out of character interviews with normal outlets, non-wrestling outlets, where he should have been a little more Cody Rhodes.
He tried to pick and choose, like when
he tried to pick and choose
when he had the mask on and when he had the mask off.
Right. And I think he took it for granted that people would say, oh, that was an out of character interview. I'm not going to hold it against him, or I'm not going to try to integrate it into the story. But what really hurt him was not only were people not willing to do that, but the collaborators on television weren't willing to do that. And they were bringing it in and saying, you're not really, you want to retire. Because I think that was intentionally part of the story, that it was like, can you do this if your heart is not entirely in it? And it just got all cattywampus.
There was a sense to me that they had a serialized story from point A to the pay-per-view that they thought was going to work. And a number of people are going to have to sit down and think about how they did this essentially WWE style build, where they did week to week to week, because he wasn't on Collision and he wasn't on Rampage. This was a weekly, like every week, as if like Seth Rollins didn't have a match at Mania and Cody Rhodes was going to show. Like, you were getting pieces of this story and you were seeing where it was going, but you weren't getting the full picture until the very end. And he tried to tell a story with his, am I all in on this or am I not, throughout the whole thing. And what ended up being was too many cooks in the kitchen with too many pieces of input on how they were best going to do it. And instead of having a singular focus on it, he was so collaborative that the singular vision just became well, everyone's got to have a little piece here, 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 or here. Jarrett got involved. Swerve started saying stuff. Other like Nigel would get in there and make commentary about this, or that. And then you'd have him going in there and he was trying to tell like the story based off of the promos. And then all of a sudden everything would have to kind of like realign to what he was saying because he is the driver of this story. Right? What Danielson is saying and doing, you have to wrap around that. So this was a main event story. Everyone should have been on the same page. Like it should have been locked in from the get-go. This is what we're going to do this week, this week, this week, this week, this week, this week. We do not deviate from this plan unless we absolutely have to. And it just felt like as every week got closer, somebody had an idea or some input or how we could do it a little bit better. And it's like, no, just stick to the fucking plan. Just stick to the plan.
I think the thing that when I would get frustrated with, or be cantankerous with people about, how they think it should go is what I would see a lot is people saying, oh, the promo that he cut at the beginning of the Owen, when it was like, this is the one thing I need to do before I retire. And this is how I'm going to do it. Was like he needed to be driven 100%. And the guy that he was in that promo and the guy that he was in the promo last Wednesday, he should have been at the whole time. And I don't necessarily, you could have done that. To me, it would have probably lost steam over the entire time to him to hold that up. I think he needed to have showed out. I think with one of the things they should have done, and I think he kind of tried to do this, but he's just so Bryan Danielson about it that it just was like passive almost. Was the idea that, you know what, that Will Ospreay match, that Tiger Driver really messed me up and should have sold that more. I should not be wrestling. That should have ended my career, but I cannot give it up now. I've got to do this one thing before I go. And there is a high probability I am going all in because I could either go this match, win and achieve this last goal before I go home to my family, or this could have been a horrible mistake and I could be crippled. So it's not just, I don't get to lose the way I want to, or I don't get to, retire the way that I chose to, but it's like my doc. And I think he tried to tell the story a little bit, but like he needed someone to say like, Bryan, you can't just be Bryan about it. You've got to be clearer than that. I did this match with Will Ospreay and that move nearly killed me and put my neck in the sense that I could be Misawa if I'm not careful. And every match I have between now until the end of my career is a huge risk. And
it's a borrowed time scenario.
It's borrowed time and I am putting it on the line. And I'm going to go do this Wembley match because it's the one thing I have left to do, to achieve, but it could be the worst mistake I ever make in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been really strong.
Now let me ask you this. Now that we got past that build, how about that goddamn match?
Oh my gosh. It was everything. The video they showed with the history, with the ROH stuff of him meditating.
The rapid fire photos of in the green.
This is, him getting zen, and this is what's flowing through his mind before he's going to the match. Then he has that close-up shot as he looks into the lens, like you could just feel the arena doing it, and then the synthesizer hits, and you get goosebumps. Just like, the final countdown in Wembley Arena is, that's the cheesiest song in the world, but like, man, nothing.
When it hits, it hits, man.
When it hits, it hits, and him coming out, feeling the moment. Showing his kids. I'd never really seen his kids before. Those kids are adorable.
They are. B4, the B4 Danielsons.
Yes, it's right. He, just came out. And then here's the other part that made me really happy about it though, that it wasn't just Danielson. Swerve's entrance was epic too. That guy came in like a world champion with the wrap and I love the jacket
coming down.
The heads of the people he's defeated in title matches on pikes on the back of his shirt.
The Jimmy Rave jacket.
He definitely, like Will Ospreay, can sell a big moment. There was a little bit of reality going in there when you're like, okay, this is with I don't know Swerve Strickland's real name, but like whoever the real
Shane?
guy is. I didn't know if Shane was actually his real name or if it was just one of his previous names. That performer being at this level to the point where it's like, I need to be the guy that is worth beating for this legend. Coming out, that crowd wrapped around it, doing everything, everything that he does, the crowd's responding to, and soaking that up when he hits the ring. You could see that performer in him, the way you see an Olympic athlete, like
he was locked in.
Yeah, locked in. Exactly. That's the thought. You saw him get locked in. And it felt like a big deal. That match felt like a big deal. And they shot the entrances really well. They shot the ring introductions really well to make it feel like shooting upward, like things that I noticed of like how they would shoot upward on them when they were doing that. It was just great. It was just great. And the match was fantastic. I have 2 criticisms.
Okay.
One, in general, I don't like watching little kids especially when they're that little.
Okay.
Watching their parents get beat up, no matter how much you tell them, there's no way.
Bloody and beaten, got it. Sure.
There's no way his younger son. He seems fine at the end.
But Buddy watching it was uncomfortable for.
That's not good.
People, and
that was a little uncomfortable. The moment where that I think was where the story came together in Bryan's mind, the story he was telling, was he needed the family. He needed his love for his family to get him the will to win. He needed to integrate it. It wasn't a thing where they were competing against each other. He needed to integrate it in his mind and win the match as a gesture of love to his family, so that in front of his kids. So when Swerve is beating him down and he's looking at the crowd, and every strike that he takes in the chest, he looks at his family and says, "I love you." And then gets stronger the more he says it, was a really
the
interesting moment. The hookup, right?
But
it was like, I've never seen someone do something that, I don't know, heartfelt or that
specific and deliberate towards your family.
Toward that particular type of emotion being what's motivating them. And the fact that they did not have a cameraman positioned to show the close-up of his family with Bree saying, "I love you," like giving back to him and giving him the strength.
For sure.
That is a missed moment that WWE would have absolutely gotten.
So this match was magnificent.
Yeah.
I found very few faults with it. In fact, I was about 98% sure who was going to win this match, and I've known that for a relatively long time. With that said, there were about 3 near falls that I thought Danielson wasn't kicking out.
Yeah.
There was one where he mouthed to his family, "I'm sorry."
I'm sorry. Yeah.
There was he took basically what was like it's Swerve's version of like the Made in Japan where he flips him over and just, he took that move and never been kicked out of before. And then he took like another Swerve stomp and he kicked out of all 3. And I tell you, Kevin, I thought that was it. And in my mind, like I knew it wasn't. But it was one of those you still had to like sit back in the chair, take a deep breath. They're like,
yeah.
Like that could have been it right there. And
I was standing.
Okay.
I came out of my seat a few times.
There are very few matches that you watch per year, let alone your entire lifetime, that will get you to react the way that this match got you to react. And I said on the Fight Game podcast on Thursday that I felt like the build to WrestleMania 30 for Danielson with like the audience and everything like that was a far superior build to his title quest here. But those 2 matches on WrestleMania 30 don't hold a candle to this one. This was it was the next level.
I think I would have to go. I think I'd have to watch it back because I honestly was just kind of, like I said, I can't be unbiased about it. Bryan Danielson's my favorite wrestler of all time. So to have this story told, I'm going to be a sucker for it. To go back and look I don't know if I would say it was better than his match with Ospreay earlier this year,
but the story made it better. The story
Sure.
would have tipped it over, even if it was a couple of steps below. I think the story of it and him and that ending would have put it over the top. I think it's very cool. This year, the AEW, they've had 3 just incredible, all-timer, amazing, spectacular matches, and it was with 3 guys. It was Ospreay Danielson, Ospreay Swerve, and Swerve Danielson. They have this triangle of just incredible matches this year that is like a really cool trilogy that I think this year is going to be looked back on. Like that was the year that happened.
Just so thankful MJF isn't in that group. I could burn his ass.
I know, right?
This is to say, everybody, this was an all-timer match. And if you are on the fence and you think like, could one match change my mind as to whether this is worth it or not to, give us pay-per-view?
Yes.
Get the $85 combo on Triller for this one and the All Out. So you're paying $40 instead of $50 for this thing.
Yeah.
This was a mixed bag on the whole. There are things that you will not agree with on the bottom of the card. But with the main title matches and the things that were meant to hit, they hit well. Like this was a fan service show. This was everything that you wanted out of the biggest show of the year. They swung for the fences on everything. And some of it, they wasn't a good idea. But you can't help a promotion that's in second place, that's trying to get a foothold, that is trying to, do everything they can to compete. You can't tell them, hey, slow down a little bit. This isn't the time to go big.
Yeah. Yeah. They met the moment, I would say. They delivered on a big show when they needed a big show and delivered on a big story, even though, like, I agree that there was some rocky paths to get there. And I think they probably got in their own head too much. And like you said, hot shot a lot when they should have just been doing steady build.
There could have been many masters, man. They got a TV deal, a bunch of programming. They got to fill what? Right. They did 13 hours of content this weekend.
Yeah, too much.
I watched all of it. Can tell you I didn't need to, but I did. Because I wanted to come in ready for the show.
And honestly, that's been a part of why I've enjoyed this. I truly think, as someone who is, coming on a show and analyzing for more than 2 hours, I actually found this time watching a little less and analyzing a little less helped my enjoyment, because I have
tuned out of the nitty gritty and going deep on this stuff, because when you go deep, you lose the plot. We're not, if we go detail analysis 5 levels into an angle instead of just covering why the angle isn't working at the top layer, we've already lost the plot. Are we coming back for All Out?
Yeah, I think so.
Great.
Yeah.
Just want everyone to know. So if you're watching now, plan for us.
Gosh, that is 2 weeks away, isn't it? My gosh.
For the sister show on a Sunday night.
That's right.
Sunday or Saturday night. I don't even know anymore.
I don't even remember.
It'll be on a weekend, 2 weeks for now.
Yep. All right. Well, we've gone almost 2 hours and 15 minutes, but it was fun, and I was glad to get all those thoughts out
for a 6
about
hour
the
show. I think we did great.
It's pretty much the whole day. We put in a full shift for AEW today.
I told my wife, Mike, I think I'm starting at 8 and might be done around 4 today when it comes to pro wrestling. Well, it's not part of the plan, but hey, we're doing it.
Yeah. My sister called last night and was like, hey, do you guys want to come over on Sunday? I was like, can't. Nope. Sorry.
About that, no.
Yeah. So I guess let's wrap this up. I'll go say hello to my family, and
I'm gonna feed my dog. The yelping that you heard randomly was them letting me know, like, hey, it's dinner time, asshole.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it is time. I need to go walk my dog. All right, so you will be back on Thursday. If anyone hasn't watched the G1 on their own and you want a really good analysis, I have not finished the show yet of listening to your wrap up of the G1, but I really enjoyed the setup to the final one and all the coverage of that. So
I appreciate that. We're gonna have Larry Sternshine on Thursday, who actually went
to
the semifinal and finals. And he's going to tell us his live account of the show. And then we're going to preview Capital Collision, which is the New Japan show, in which Leo Rush and Mercedes Moné and a number of others are going to be on that show, Grizzled Young Vets. We're going to be reviewing that show on Friday night after the show.
Okay.
And then, if all goes according to plan, we might have an actual New Japan talent on our show the following Thursday.
Wow.
But I'm not going to tell anyone who it is because this is the first time I've mentioned it. And if it doesn't come to pass, then no harm, no foul.
Okay, I won't even guess. A name came to my mind immediately that would be incredible.
You can ask me off air, and I'll tell you yes or no.
Okay. It probably won't be that person, but yeah.
No.
All right, then.
It is
Let's.
not Gideon Gray.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Right.
Thank you guys for watching, whether you watched the whole time or just a little. I know Vinkin held in there for the whole time. So
thank you, Vinkin. It was lovely to see you.
Thank you, Garrett, for continuing to give me a spot to come on and talk about pay-per-views. And thank you, Jeremy. It's always good to talk to you.
You know, I love talking to you, and you're welcome to come on my show anytime.
Great. I need to do more homework because I'm pretty spotty with my New Japan, but yeah. I'll look forward to it. All right. Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.